Al over at Music Store Live, and today I am very lucky to be speaking with Reeves Gabrels. Reeves has worked for David Bowie and currently playing with The Cure and a bunch of side projects. And we're really happy to be speaking with you, Reeves.
Well, nice to be talking to you. It's been either a really long 30 years or a really short 30 years. I'm
wow,
not sure.
That's quite the intro there. My God. Maybe we can start with that. Do you want to give us maybe the abbreviated version of kind of your musical journey and how it's landed you where you are now?
I'll give you the super abbreviated version. My father talked me into taking guitar lessons because he thought I was too serious about my schoolwork, and
that's like the opposite of every guitar player.
That's exactly why that's why I always point it out, and he thought it would make me more at that point in my life I wanted to be a comic book artist. So, and I actually, had just discovered that back in the early 70s, it was the whole thing of open format radio. FM radio was still a fairly new thing, so you had people playing music and treating it like it was, it was rock and roll and it was fun, or it was experimental music and it was fun, but it was also it was art, it was an art over commerce, and it was a lifestyle, and I was attracted to that, and I used to so I would come home from school. I found school really easy, so I never really had to work that hard to do well, and I just come home and start drawing, and after I got my homework out of the way, or go hang out with my friends or whatever. But at that point in time, it was Blind Faith and Led Zeppelin 1 and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and that was the music that was going on around us, and I just kind of, and Humble Pie Rockin' the Fillmore was a huge discovery when I found that, and then it evolved from that, and then I got into fusion and ended up taking lessons from John Schofield, and then he talked me into going to Berklee College of Music, and I went there for a little while after going to art school. I did end up going to art school, and then I went and I was playing in bands and then started taking lessons from Schofield, and he said he kind of talked me into going to Berklee, and I went to Berklee for a couple of years and ended up in Boston playing in bands. Quit Berklee because I was too busy playing, and then played in a ton of local Boston bands and all different kinds of music, and from playing the country circuit up in New England, which used to exist up there, to playing weddings. I did one year I played 185 weddings.
Oh.
and I think that was 1986 or 85, and then in 1987 I met Bowie, and through my ex-wife, and because she did press for him on one tour, and I met him, never told him I played guitar. At the end of the tour, he found out. She gave him a copy of a band I had, and about 6 months later, he called me up and he said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And because I used to go out on the road to see her, and I would hang out with him, and then he got to the point apparently where he would look forward to me coming out, because it was somebody that wasn't part of the day-to-day being on tour thing, and he thought I was a fine arts painter. He didn't know that I actually was a guitar player, and I didn't want to say anything, because if I said anything about playing guitar, it would make me seem opportunistic, and it would kind of ruin everything.
Right.
You know, and he was like my three non-guitar playing heroes were probably Bowie, Miles Davis, and Buck Owens.
Nice.
Though he was a guitar player, but he wasn't like a lead guitar player. He wasn't the kind
that's a great list.
you know, and it's an odd list. And then next thing I ended up playing with him, and from there David asking me to write with him in '88, and then that became Tin Machine. But that just kind of, once I had the Bowie Good Housekeeping seal of approval, it opened up, basically everything else. Because suddenly after that, people that didn't want me to play on their stuff, and I had all kinds of new friends at that point. But I'd also, I had all kinds of new friends and all kinds of friends. People that had not been my friends suddenly had been my friends for years. It was one of those. It's an interesting experience. And then what was great about it was I got to do a lot of things with a lot of different people through the years. And it's also how I met Robert Smith, and he's on one of my solo records, Robert is, and also on another one there's a song that he and I wrote. And he and I had done some side stuff, and I had played on a Cure single and one other track, and back in the 90s. And what was great about it was just being able to move through the world of people who just get to make stuff because they love it, and not, and are fortunate enough that they can make stuff that they love and people want to hear it, and that led to me being, to Robert asking, and the rest of the guys in the band asking me to join the Cure a couple of years ago. So that's the short story with a whole bunch of stuff missing from the middle.
Right, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. My God, it's such a, to play with one of your heroes every now and then. We talk to someone and it's one of those stories, someone you grew up idolizing, and then you get to play for them.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite things was I did a tour with in 93, 94, I think it was. I did 2 tours with Paul Rodgers, and I knew every Free song from when I was a kid. Just standing in front of. Certain songs when I would play them with Paul on stage, I would, if I closed my eyes, I was standing in front of my turntable in my parents' living room with my first guitar playing, and some of those gigs with Paul were just, some of the most fun that I had. And it was actually kind of perverse for me to do that, because after Tin Machine and doing stuff with Bowie, everyone kind of typecasts you as a certain type of musician, and I was put in the Robert Fripp, Adrian Belew kind of camp, or noisemaker camp,
right?
And it took, so when I got offered the gig of playing the guitar with Paul Rodgers, it was like there's nothing more perverse I could do than to go out and play blues rock. So I had it all. I went out and did the tour with a stack and a 60s Flying V and a coily cable.
Nice. That's awesome.
It was kind of that was as close as I could get to tradition guitar wise, but
nice, yeah. Oh man, that's great. Reeves, if we could switch gears a little bit here.
Yeah, sure.
I want to ask you about your Reverend Guitars. You have two of them now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little about those and kind of the thinking behind the designs.
Well, the first one was I had been in the mid 2000, like 2005, around there. I contracted Lyme disease in the late 90s without realizing it. I had gotten very sick and had it very badly, and so I kind of disappeared for a couple. There was about 4 years there where I didn't do anything, and it took a couple of years because I was at that point living on the West Coast. It wasn't as widely known as it is now, and in fact, I kind of parallel if you ever read Daryl Hall's stories about his contracting Lyme and what he has been through with it. We both got it around the same time, and our experience is very similar. Anyway, when I came back out of the woodwork, I had moved to Nashville to kind of recuperate, and I went to after not going to any of the NAMM shows or anything. I went to the summer NAMM show in Nashville, I think in 2009, maybe it was, and not having been doing very much at that point, not going to not having gone to the NAMM shows for a few years. Everybody was very kind and very curious about what guitar I was playing, would I like to play their guitar, so on and so forth. So I ended up coming home from the NAMM show with about 5 different guitars or 4 different guitars in like the $2,000 to $5,000 range, and then the guys from Reverend sent me one of their guitars because I was really interested. I'd seen Reverends around for when they were originally out in the late 90s, and the design was slightly different, and they always played great and sounded great. So anyway, one day, I found myself with these really nice high-end guitars, and then the Reverend, which is a nice, medium range guitar. I would say, just off, without if you wanted to categorize it as something, it's their guitars are in the the $700 to $1,500 range. And so you tend not to compare a guitar that's from a working man's price range to something that's a doctor. I'm going to make it sound like doctors and lawyers don't work. I don't mean it that way, but
no, I know what you mean. Though,
there are guitars that are made to that are trophy guitars, and then there are guitars that are made to get beer spilt on them and cigarette burns and everything else. And I've always kind of lean towards the guitars that are made for bars, and so anyway, I found myself trying these different guitars out, and I kept going back to the Reverend, the one that I kept taking to every gig I was doing. I would take 2 to every gig, and I kept taking the Reverend. So I called up Joe Naylor and Ken Haas, and I said, I'm in love with this guitar that I got from you guys. Would you guys want to are you serious about doing a signature model? Could we change these 1 or 2 things? And they were like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I sent the other guitars back to the companies that I'd gotten them from. It would have been worse for me to keep them and not play them, I think. And so the first, what is now called the Reeves Gabrels model, is kind of like it's a bolt-on, and it's a Fender scale, or what we think of as Fender scale, which is 20 25 and a quarter, 25 and a half, and jumbo frets, Wilkinson tremolo, everything I would do to because I played a lot of Strats and owned a lot of Strats, and I still have my Strat. I've got a vintage parts Strat that I put together from Schecter and Mighty Mite parts in the 70s.
Nice.
Still, and so I guess that's vintage now, right? But my Frankenstrat. Anyway, so through the years, you know what you have to do to make a guitar playable, and all of those things were already being done by Reverend. They already had the graphite nut, had locking tuners, had a Wilkinson tremolo on it. One of the things we added to my guitar is it has a push-pull thing on the tone control, so you can throw the pickups into true out of phase, so you get that sort of like B.B. King, Peter Green, and even when it's heavily distorted, it gets a little kind of like that Brian May snarly kind of sound. So it's a versatile Strat-ish guitar, and now the guitar has the rail hammers, the pickups that Joe Naylor designed in them, which are they're kind of
like half and half, right?
So, sorry?
They're like half and half, right? Half rail and half pole.
Yeah, half rail, half pole pieces, and they have a quality to them that's the ones I use are the in my Reeves Gabrels bolt-on. They've got the chisel, because he makes three different models. He makes the hyper vintage, the chisel, and then the anvil. And the anvil is the chisel's kind of like hot humbucker PAF-ish sounding pickups, and that's what's in there. But the other thing that they do on the Reverend Guitars is they have this brilliant thing that I use almost more than I use the toggle switch, and it's the bass roll-off, which keeps all of the top end and mid-range. It just takes the bass out of it, so you can have two humbuckers and make it sound like a Telecaster by rolling it all out, so you can thin it out. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll roll back the amount of bass in the pickup for rhythm stuff, so the notes of the chords come out more clearly. And then when I want it for a solo, the single note stuff to be fatter, I just bring the bottom back in. And it's a really clever idea, and nobody else has done it. That's a Joe Naylor thing. That's proprietary to the Reverend stuff. And then the new signature model is the it's funny to keep saying my name. When you have something that's named after you, and then you are that person, and then you have to say your name. It's like the Reeves Gabrels model. Prior to a few years ago, I was the only existing Reeves Gabrels model. But now the new guitar is the Reeves Gabrels Space Hawk. I had a design in mind, and I went over to Joe's house. Ken and I did, and we spent an afternoon working on the shape, and basically I wanted it something that was more appropriate to the band, to playing with the Cure. I wanted something that was Gibson scale, or 24 3/4, with big frets. I wanted it to be kind of like I like Gretches and 335s and things like that, but and I've got an old I've got a 62 Gretsch that I love, but I don't really take it out of the house. But that had it's a Chet Atkins, and it has no F holes. It's got the F holes painted onto it. So, and I had a B.B. King guitar that was semi-hollow but didn't have F-holes. So one of my things was I wanted it to be semi-hollow but no F-holes. And I also used to have a Trini Lopez, which I always liked the 6-in-line headstock with a kind of a 335-ish shape. But I wanted the guitar to look like, at the end of the day, visually, I wanted it to look like, if you saw a picture of Vic Flick, who played guitar on the James Bond theme music, you know, the dun 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 dun. If you saw a picture of him with John Barry in the studio in 1966 recording the theme from Goldfinger, the guitar would not seem out of place visually.
It's a really specific.
Yeah, and you know, like a little bit of a reflects the Burns a little bit because it's got a segmented pick guard, so it's not just a one-piece pick guard; it's a 3-piece pick guard. But it's not specifically any of those things, but you can get a little whiff of those elements. You know, but the big thing for me was it's a 2-humbucker. It's got a hyper vintage in the neck, which is their version of the Railhammer, like a vintage PAF, and then a chisel in the bridge, has the bass roll-off. But the other thing I did was, after spending years with Stratocasters and Strat-style tremolos, you know, we all come up with our tricks about how to make them play in tune. You know, it's the old traditional Strat tremolos and all that. And we take them apart, we put them back together, and we buy different springs for the tremolo and, you know, graphite saddles and all this stuff. Well, what I wanted was, I've always liked the way Bigsby sounded, but I wanted it to have a different travel. And I played a couple of really old ones that had old springs in them, and they had a different feel. And almost like a Kaler, something really soft. But when you actually played the guitar, because the bridge isn't moving, and because it doesn't affect the tone like the Kaler used to, because the Kalers were kind of tone killers in a lot of cases, unless you got lucky with the combination of wood and the guitar and everything. I decided to spend a couple of months, and I really looked into the Bigsby. I put a Bigsby on a 335 that I had and used that as my guinea pig. And I took the Bigsby apart, and I looked at how it fit together and where the stress points were and what needed to be lubricated and blah, blah, blah. And really, at the end of the day, it just came down to the spring. So I got a bunch of different springs from a bunch of different places and some motorcycle valve springs. And I finally found a spring that really worked, that let me do, like, you know, the Jeff Beck wobble, the way Jeff Beck will pop the bar in the Strat. It'll go like, well, I wanted to be able to do that with the Bigsby, and I found a spring that would let me do that. I actually FedExed it to Joe Naylor, and then he found a spring manufacturer who duplicated it, basically, but duplicated it so that it was the right size to fit perfectly inside an existing Bigsby B5 or B50 tremolo. And I also measured the distance that I wanted between the bridge, between the Tune-O-Matic bridge, which is actually a roller bridge on mine, so it doesn't hang up, and where the Bigsby vibrato would sit on the body. And so I had some very specific measurements and everything else, and Reverend built it for me, and it's amazing. And it's everything it's almost a more musical for me after playing Strat style trems and Steinberger trems and the Parker trem on the Parkers. It's almost, this is probably the most musical tremolo setup I've ever had, where I can actually control, like, the pitch doesn't change quite as fast as it does on a Strat style tremolo, so you can actually control your vibrato and how you can play melodies with it and feel where the notes are more readily, and I'm obviously way into it.
Yeah.
But
well, it's great. I mean, it's really you. You know, it's not just your name on there. It's got, you know.
Yeah, well, it's all I play is you know, I just play my. I mean, occasionally when I need something different, like a Strat, like a 3 pickup Strat thing, I'll play the Reverend six gun.
Mm-hmm.
See, there it is again, the Reverend six gun.
Yeah, the weapon.
but pretty much I can do the entire Cure gig except for the acoustic stuff. I can do it with those 2 guitars, and we play 3.5 hours.
Wow.
So, you know, that's a lot of different material that covers a span of years, and I can, between the bass roll off and the different types of tremolo, but on the 2 different guitars and the different scale lengths and the different pickups, I can cover it all with those 2 Reverends.
And I love that the semi-hollow with no holes cut into it. I think that's such a cool design. It's kind of underutilized.
It works great because I've got I was a fan of the Sustainiac Sustainer, which is a pickup that you can put in your guitar that gives you like infinite sustain, which I've been using that since a Sustainer pickup probably since the mid-'90s. And, you know, you also kind of fall into certain ruts with it because you know that if you hit the switch, that note is just going to sustain forever. You know, and I was kind of against it when I first got it because I was like, oh, it's going to take all the art out of, you know, working the amp and the physics of it and getting the guitar to sing and the notes to sustain. And but then I got addicted to it, and having the semi-hollow guitar without the actual F holes, it eliminates that. I mean, I play and we play. I mean, I'm running 300 watt heads and 3 4x12s.
Wow.
And I don't have any problems with that sort of woofy feedback that you get with semi-hollow guitars.
Right, yeah.
You know, that where the body just starts going. You know, it's and what I've discovered is that the fun of the getting the note to feed, having to work the guitar and the amp to get the note to feed back, that the semi-hollow is very giving. It wants to go with you.
Right, yeah.
You know, and you just have to kind of it's more about muting the strings you don't want than making the strings you do want sustain. And it's so in fact, by making the guitar semi-hollow, it's really made it easier for me to play without the battery operated sustainer pickup.
Right. I got you. That's very cool. You know,
it keeps it interesting.
Yeah, the kind of artful feedback is really interesting. I like that effect a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things that you can do with the sustainer pickup that you can't do with anything else. Even maybe, not even the EBO. You know, there's some upper octave stuff that's just, you know, insane that you can do with a Sustainiac system. But you know, but for the most part, I'm having a blast playing the Space Hawk.
Yeah.
And then the colors are cool too because it's black, metallic red, metallic pewter, which really looks more like a silver, and then a sort of an antique metallic gold.
Yeah, that's cool.
So they're
too, right?
Yeah, and it's not, when I say metallic, it's not like big chunk metal flake. It's very kind of subtle. It's more like the kind of gold or the kind of flaking they would put in like a Les Paul Gold Top or something like that.
It's
not
a little
heavy-handed. And we actually looked at swatches from. We got a swatch book from an auto body shop to figure out what the colors would be. So I guess it's been a pretty hands-on experience for me.
Yeah, I can tell. My God, it's great. It's so good to hear. There's I think.
Well, I don't understand. I don't understand when people put their name on an instrument and I mean, it's one thing if you've got an old your old standby, that you've been playing for years, and that you don't like doing a gig without it. I can understand that you bring it along, but there's been the whole thing. There's a lot of times people just put their name on a product to keep their name out there, not because they use it.
Yeah.
That's kind of annoying. But
yeah, I gotcha. Hey, Reeves, before I let you go, I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
We've been asking everyone who we interview this question. What is music?
Well, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to answer it. Well, this is the thing that I believe, and I'm not really sure where it came from, but it's who said it. But it's an artist's responsibility to teach people to, if you're a visual artist, to teach people to see what exists around them already through their art, and it's a musician's responsibility to teach people to hear the music that's already there. And if we all did our jobs really well, we'd probably put ourselves out of business. We wouldn't have a job. So I guess what music is. It's what we're just surrounded by it. I guess that would be my answer. It's the background noise in the telephone line right now. It's anyone that's done any work with Pro Tools or chopped up waveforms knows how much music is in like 25 milliseconds of. If you just take a 25 millisecond slice of sound, because that's all you're going to get if you take a 25 millisecond slice and chop it up and duplicate it a few hundred times, it becomes musical in some way. It might not be music that you want to hear, but it's music's like oxygen. It's like it's just where it's. I'm listening while I'm talking, in that pause, in that really brief pause like that, right there, I just heard a car go down the street, and its tires. It's raining. I'm in London, and I could hear its tires on the pavement, and a jet from Heathrow going overhead in the opposite direction. So not only did I get the little bit of music of that, but I also got some stereo panning.
Nice.
So that's music.
Yeah. That's great, man. That's a great response. Thank you, Reeves.
This is
cool.
me trying to keep. This is me trying to get not talk too much and get right to the point.
Oh God, no! Please talk a lot. I mean, it's great. It's you have a lot of great things to say. Well, I think that about does it.
Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to go over?
No. I'm just happy to. I'm happy if that works for you. Just talking about those two guitars is was really the only directive I was given.
Yeah.
By the folks at Reverend.
And I can tell. I mean, you have a lot of really, really great stuff to say. Unfortunately, we have to keep them to about like a half hour. And
yeah, no, we'll chop it up however you need to. I have a, as far as the what's music question, I have a record coming out with this guy Bill Nelson from Bebop Deluxe, a band called Bebop Deluxe from the 70s, and he had a band called Red Noise, and he's been a solo artist since then. We've got a record coming out the end of this month, which might answer that question too.
Oh, wow. All right. I'll have to check that out then.
Yeah, and then I have a new solo record coming out the end of the summer as well. So, but I'm sure you'll see plenty of that stuff online. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for speaking with us. I know you're super busy.
It's my pleasure. No problem.
That's awesome, Reeves. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.
Well, you have a good one.
You too. I'll see you, man.